Netflix's winning bid for Warner Brothers Discovery's film and streaming assets still has obviously a long way to go before it's finalized. Joining us now with his take on the deal, former MTV president and COO Michael Wolff. He's co-founder and CEO of Activate. What do you think when it happened and your overall impression?
It's a must-do for Netflix.
For Netflix.
And there are a couple of reasons. One, for anybody to succeed in streaming, they need two things. They need, one, global franchises that really work everywhere, and they need large volumes of programming. And so if you look at it, Netflix really isn't competing just with HBO Max. They're competing, their biggest competitor is YouTube. And then you've got Amazon Prime, and then the other is Tubi TV. So people forget about both Amazon Prime and Tubi TV, which is owned by Fox. So it comes down to even the number of titles. So right now, if you look at the comparison, Netflix has 7,000 titles. HBO has 4,000 titles. Amazon Prime has 25,000, and Tubi has 70,000. So this market. They really, in a lot of ways, that they had to have this. And then earlier you were talking about Peacock and about Paramount Plus. They both have something that Netflix doesn't have. They have live sports, and that's the other place where this game is going to be played. And they don't get live sports with the HBO Max deal.
Because just when you started, it's like they had to have this. Netflix is the elephant in the room right now in terms of having succeeded in media at the expense of everybody else, all the legacy players. So I would have thought you would have said, if Netflix has to have it, how much did Comcast have to have it? How much did the other suitors need? They needed it even more than Netflix.
Well, they needed it, but Netflix is the default, where most people start when they're looking at streaming. They start with Netflix.
Right.
When they look at where they're actually watching, they start with YouTube. In a lot of ways, YouTube is TV for a number of people.
Some people said that this does nothing to help Netflix compete against YouTube, just buying a library of old boomer films.
It does, because there are two different modalities in terms of viewing. If on YouTube, what you're watching is short. You're watching, in a lot of cases, under 3 to 4 minutes, and especially even less so now with YouTube Shorts. When you look at Netflix and HBO Max and Amazon Prime and Tubi, you're watching much longer form. You're watching hours, you're watching 2-hour movies. There's different viewing.
Are they going to continue to put out the theatrical releases at the same pace that Warner Brothers has to this point? Because there's some people concerned about whether they'll really stick to that or not.
It's not clear, but I can tell you one thing, which is all of the studios, the things that they're going out with big releases are really the top franchise films. And that's going to continue because they need that audience build, and they need the huge amount of advertising and promotion that comes around that. Otherwise, those films aren't as valuable when they're on a streaming service.
What do you make of, we were talking earlier about this, if you are Paramount right now, or you're Comcast, or you name the other, Sony even, I mean, there's a couple players around. Do you try to do a deal quickly, maybe among yourselves, to try to draft off of this deal, meaning from a regulatory perspective, if there's two deals in front of the DOJ and you're starting to think about competition in that way, that's different than one deal and waiting effectively 18 months, 24 months, or whatever, however long you think it's going to take to then figure out how to pick apart the pieces later if you think that deal gets blocked. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that the rationale will be less about getting approval, and it'll be much more about figuring out how they're going to put together a service that really can rival the new Netflix service, especially because it's going to take a while for this deal to clear.
Right, no, but what I'm saying is either you sit around and you say to yourself, this deal is not going to make it, and we're going to spend all of our firepower, all of our energy to try to upend this transaction in Washington and pray that in 18 months this deal doesn't happen, in which case then you're Paramount, you go back at it in some other way, or then Comcast has an opportunity, whatever. Or you say to yourself, the train has left the station, I'm letting the train go, and I'm going to actually just now deal with it, and I'm going to try to make my own deal.
I think it's the latter. I think it's really around figuring out, you're not going to, way. I mean, there's the rationale for the deal. I mean, regardless of whether or not it's the whims of the president, you put that aside. The rationale for the deal from a market share perspective, it really isn't great. I brought the numbers. Here's the percentage of TV viewing. So you've got 46% of TV viewing is streaming, 12.9% is YouTube, 8% is Netflix, 4.8% Disney. Warner Brothers Discovery is 1.3%.
But how are you? But but this is a question about definition. When you say TV, the TV market share,
right?
Some people say it should be eyeball market share in terms of time spent. In which case, YouTube would be. What number would that really be?
YouTube is 12.9%.
12.9%.
Of YouTube is of eyeballs.
So where in the eyeball is that? You're looking at it as an eyeball
because
game.
that's really we have to look at it.
But then would you put video games in that marketplace?
Well, that's not TV.
Well, but this is why. But what I'm saying is, by the way, some people are going to say it's the theater business, and because that's a specific business, and this can have an impact on the theater business.
Yeah, you can keep adding it up, but still, this deal this deal gets smaller.
Okay, here's one set.
Wait a second. Is President Trump right that Netflix has way too much power already, and that this could be too big? It reminds me of Kroger trying to merge with some other supermarket chain when you got Amazon and Walmart. You're not even defining what the current market or the future market is. You're saying Netflix is not a monopoly right now.
No, it's not.
So do you think this passes regulatory muster when it comes down
on the merits of it? Absolutely, it should pass.
So then when the president says there's problems, it's way too big, they got way too much control of streaming, he's missing all the other things.
I think he's missing out on the facts. Okay. I mean, the facts here are that the company that is quickly becoming the monopoly is YouTube.
Right. Okay, so there's a cynical take. The most cynical take that you could have on this transaction is that Netflix says to themselves, it'll cost for $5.8 billion, potentially, I can slow everybody else's train down. Meaning, I'm effectively paying for 2 years of regulatory mishigas. During that 2-year period, I'm going to be able to make all sorts of new shows. People are going to come to us. They're not going to go to HBO or any of these other services because no one's going to know what's going on. And I'm going to win. And if that's what it costs, that's what it costs. What do you make of that?
I don't agree with this.
In a sort of defensive posture.
I don't agree with the cynical point of view. And there are a couple of reasons. One of them is the overlap among these services is pretty low. The overlap with HBO Max and Netflix, roughly about 30%. The overlap with Netflix and Amazon is about 60%. So it's not as if they're going to crowd somebody else at this point.
No, but look, I'm in the creative business. I like to try to make shows and do things. If you were going to sell a show today, who would you sell your show to? In this, right this minute, how much more complicated does it get to sell a show to an HBO, for example, right now, when you don't know what its future is going to be, or maybe even a Paramount or whomever, than it would be to Netflix, because Netflix now looks like they're in the clear winner
But the
seat.
cynical point of view is that you'll sell, if you're a producer of television or films, you're going to sell your show to the people who are going to pay you the most. I mean, right now, this is a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market in terms of shows. A couple of years ago, it was a seller's
market. That, by the way, boy, is that true.
Yeah. So that's not where this comes down to. This comes down to really the bigger issue here is sports. You've got Amazon going very deep on sports. You've got YouTube going deep on sports, and at the same time, both Peacock and Paramount Plus have a lot of sports. And you know who doesn't is Warner. Is Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't have any sports.